Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're opening up a forbidden text. It's essentially a dark observational field guide written by an entity we only know as the Crow. We're going to step right into a grim, dark Gothic fable, a reality entirely defined by psychological ruins, cosmic accounting, and just horrifying finality. We'll be exploring the inner workings of a cosmic utility called the Sapphire Forge, and we're looking at all of this through the detached, raspy perspective of the Crow, which really forces us to confront the terrifying reality of what actually happens when a human soul is just completely exhausted. Right off the bat, I want you to consider this chilling philosophy from the Jester of Sapphire Light. The Jester is basically the curator of the Forge, and they say, "The miracle of existence is not the heroic struggle, but the final arithmetic." I mean, think about what that implies. It completely severs the whole idea of the traditional hero's journey. In this dark universe, all of your struggles, your rusted armor, your weeping, all of that kinetic noise, it means absolutely nothing. To the Jester, a human life is literally just an inefficiency. It's a thermodynamic error that's just waiting to be silenced and perfectly calculated. That before a hero can be unmade, they have to be observed. Now, philologically speaking, the word zeitgeist denotes the spirit of the time. But in this grim architecture, we're looking at a darkly subverted superego. Picture this, a detached, unblinking consciousness perched way up high on the jagged spires of the glass library. That's the Crow. It acts as this unblinking eye, tracking the traveler's descent through psychological ruins and tracking the crushing weight of their silver guilt. It doesn't step in to help. It's just this inevitable presence that simply watches and registers every single broken vow. Now, this gaze isn't just passive observation. Not at all. The Crow is actually engaged in what's called the Black Harvest. It literally feeds upon that mounting despair. It wanders the psychological ruins to gather cynical knowledge, kind of like black-green, directly from the discarded energy of Nietzschean higher men. And specifically, it metabolizes the sterile data of a cyber-enhanced custodian known as the Last Thinker, which, by the way, is this terrifying arachnid-formed entity that interfaces with the Ultimate Ledger. So the Crow is taking all this negative energy from these failed philosophies and using it as fuel for its own dark evolutionary purpose. And this brings us to the terrifying debate at the very heart of this fable. You have the Crow on one side, arguing that suffering, even in its absolute darkest form, holds profound meaning. The Crow sees cynicism and despair as palpable things, acting as evolutionary fuel for the psyche. But then you have the Jester. The Jester views that exact same suffering as mere kinetic noise. It's just thermodynamic inefficiency, raw data that's waiting to be violently structured and resolved. So it really begs the question, right? Does our organic suffering hold intrinsic philosophical power, or is it literally just raw math waiting to be solved? Well, when the burden of that suffering becomes too immense, the Crow has to manifest. And if we look at that word philologically, manifest means to be made palpable by the hand. So as a hero's despair grows incredibly dense, the sheer weight of it actually shatters the boundary of reality. The Crow transitions from being this invisible spirit of the time into actual physical flesh. It steps right out of the shadows to become a palpable register of the cost, serving as an active, physical judge for the hero's final trial. And this physical manifestation kicks off an agonizing climax of the psyche, an event known as the sovereign deed at the vacant throne. What we're looking at here is a psychological execution, directly overseen by the now physical Crow. The violet gavel strikes down without an ounce of mercy, violently crushing together the hero's internal gods of memory, reason, and will. It's the absolute failure of human thinking, and it serves as a brutal preparation, getting the hero ready for the cold mechanics of the Jester's domain. So this execution prepares the shattered soul for the void ledger. The word ledger is rooted in the concept of a lying or resting place, but here it's a monolithic zero-point crystalline matrix. It is the ultimate structural optimization. You can think of it as the definitive final laugh. It's the place where the kinetic friction of a chaotic, weeping soul is finally, permanently stilled. It closes the narrative forever. And getting into that ledger requires the arithmetic of unmaking, which is just a brutally clinical dismantling. It starts with an ontological fire. They call it the Z-pinch plasma touch. Then comes the thermal volatilization of identity, which literally boils away a hero's memories and their vitality. Whatever's left of the biological form gets reduced to a uniform, non-reactive slurry. And finally, that slurry is crystallized into a high-density, polished silicate artifact, a small, perfect blue gem,
All that biology, all that messy tragedy, seamlessly converted into perfect geometric symmetry.
Log entry number 884912. I really want you to think about the gravity of that figure for a second. Nearly 1,000,000 profound, sweeping, tragic narratives, all clinically dismantled. An entire lifetime of concentrated sorrow, of epic battles, of broken swords and broken vows. It ultimately just becomes a single mass input statistic on a cosmic spreadsheet.
But you might be wondering, how exactly do you record data in a void? I mean, you certainly don't use ink. The ledger ensures absolute permanence by utilizing frozen gravitational waves. Once a narrative is concluded and converted into that silicate data, it gets slotted into the ledger with the heavy, definitive thud of a hydraulic press. That ensures the concluded narrative isn't just forgotten. No, it is accurately and permanently accounted for in the zero-point matrix.
Yet all this cosmic accounting leaves behind a pretty gruesome byproduct. The Greek root of the word chaos means a gaping maw. When the soul's narrative inertia is surgically extracted by the forge to create that polished gem we talked about, the biological tissue is just left behind as a hollow vessel. That gaping maw, that discarded shell, it becomes a reservoir for something else entirely, something that exists totally outside the perfect data of the ledger.
Because of this, the forge leaves us staring at two terrifying outcomes facing each other across the uncanny mirror. On one side, we have the silicate artifacts, those perfect, polished blue gems clicking into the ledger. That's the accurately accounted data with its perfect geometric symmetry. But on the other side, we have the thermodynamic echoes. These are beautifully quiet shadows made of chaos and ink that just wander the forge. They're the residual vibrations, the quiet inefficiency of being that simply cannot be integrated into the perfect math of the ledger.
Which brings us to the horrifying mercy of the void. A narrative is only perfectly finished when the human fetish of form has been completely solved. That right there is the ultimate, chilling goal of the Sapphire Forge. It treats the very concept of identity as a punishment. By stripping away that crushing weight and turning it into a perfect, silent zero, the ledger requires absolutely nothing more from the universe. It's an industrial mercy, but one that only comes after the total exhaustion of a soul. So what does all this mean for us? We have to ask ourselves, does your suffering hold intrinsic meaning, like the crow's black harvest suggests? Or are you just kinetic noise waiting to be mathematically solved by the jester's arithmetic? It's a heavy thought to leave you with, but consider carefully the ultimate mass-energy balance of your own life. You have to wonder whether your narrative is a heroic struggle, or if it's really just an eventual line item.